This race was an odd one, for at least for the standards of 2022. This year has been all about on-track action, being and banging, exciting moments and exciting finishes. Richmond offered a bit of a twist to that. Not much action on the racetrack, but in this case, much of the action took place on pit road, and tire strategy was the key to this race. We got a lot to talk about, especially about things that took place at the end of the race. Welcome back to the episode of MDK Racing Victory Stop. My name is Jet. Hope you're having a wonderful Sunday. And yeah, this race was slow at first. The pace of Richmond, we had a feeling was not going to offer so much on-track action. Not a lot of passing, as Richmond hasn't been the action track as it had been in decades, really. But this race offered a little bit of a twist. I, for one, enjoyed it, but let's get into it. So, Stage 1 and Stage 2, nothing much, like I said, about on-track action. Stage 1, Ryan Blaney, who won the pole for this race, led wire to wire. Byron would finish in second, Chastain third, Truex Jr. in fourth, and Kyle Busch rounded the top 5 with Elliott, Bell, Logano, Brad Keselowski, and Kevin Harvick ran at the top 10. Now, there was some alright racing. It wasn't great racing, but there was some battles happening throughout that first stage. A lot of comers and goers, especially with a lot of the teams picking different strategies. Some were going the one-stop strategy for the stage. Some were electing with two-stop strategies. Lots of tire management, many drivers on different strategies, which allowed for a lot of comers and goers. Stage 2, we started to see the tire strategy become more prevalent into how it actually affected basically the trend of the race. So Martin Truex Jr., he was one of the first ones to pit on lap 123, and as a result of that, he had been working his way up towards the front, while other drivers were electing to go to pit much later, like Christopher Bell, who stayed out on the racetrack. He finally pitted on lap 155, and Truex became the race leader. 20 laps later, though, because Truex pitted so much earlier, Truex pits, gives a lead back to Christopher Bell. And like I said, again, so many different drivers on so many different strategies. You had different contenders up in the top 5, top 10. Some drivers were much farther behind. And then when another pit cycle was to take place, it would kind of just shuffle itself out back to normal. Near the ending of the stage, Truex, like I mentioned, on that two-stop strategy, because he pitted on lap 175, he would have about 20 or so lap fresher tires than Christopher Bell. As a result, that was no surprise to see Truex chase down Christopher Bell, and on lap 212, he would eventually take the lead from the 20 car and doesn't look back and goes on to win Stage 2. Bell would finish in second. Third was Chastain once again. Fourth, Logano and Blaney the top 5. Elliott once again in 6th. 7th, Kevin Harvick. 8th, Kyle Busch. 9th, Kyle Larson. And Brad Keselowski, he rounds out the top 10. Now, there was one moment that took place in Stage 2 involving between Ryan Blaney and Ross Chastain. Something happened, but apparently, Blaney might have gotten into Ross Chastain in turns 3 and 4. Chastain didn't like that, and so then he got payback at Blaney, moved Blaney up the racetrack. I think this was for 6th place, and Chastain would go on by. But it wouldn't be the end of their little skirmish session there. But yeah, it was a bit cool to see some of that action take place, especially at a track like Richmond, which hasn't been known for those exciting bean and banging moments. It was a nice little twist of things, and it's not a surprise to see Chastain race like this, especially after that happened last weekend at Coda. I think we've become accustomed to Chastain basically not giving a F about anyone. Now, Stage 3 was really when everything became exciting to watch. Stage 1, Stage 2, it was more exciting if you enjoy more the technical side, the strategic side of NASCAR, then you really love Stage 1, Stage 2, even though they didn't offer much on the racetrack. Stage 3 offered a lot of pit strategy, offered a lot of tire management, as well as some great battles, especially near the end. It began a bit chaotic this stage, a lot of 3-wide and 4-wide racing, no surprise to see that on restarts. Then, like I talked about that whole issue with Chastain and Blaney, we had another installment of that. Blaney got back at Chastain to get by him in turns 3 and 4, but that would be it. That would be the last of their little issues. Chastain wouldn't get back at Blaney. There would be no more bean and bang going on between those two guys. Because of all of these issues, a lot of these battles and bean and bang going on at the start of the stage, it was going to be bound that we would have our first real incident caution involving drivers crashing, and it happened in turns 1 and 2. Between Eric Jones, who gets loose, hits Stenhouse, who then hits Cody Ware and sends him into the outside wall for, like I said, the first real caution involving drivers actually being involved or have some type of crash incident. We restart and then have another accident. Ty Dillon and Cole Custer make contact, and Austin Cindric, an innocent bystander, gets turned as a result of that incident, and he brings out the next caution. This is interesting because when that caution came out with Austin Cindric, it set up almost perfectly to have a two-stop strategy between certain teams. Again, we knew some teams were going to elect a two-stop strategy while some only elected one stop for the final stage. So this is when we start to see strategy really take place in stage 3 almost immediately. Joe Logano, who was second at that caution, had a slow pit stop with the Jag, sent him to the rear, and basically took him out of contention for this race. So Byron and Suarez, they stayed down, they became 1 and 2, but with Martrick Jr. on those fresh tires, not too far behind, it wasn't going to take long for him to take over. Takes over Suarez for second place. 90 laps to go. Pit stops begin. Martrick Jr., he stays out, going for that one-stop strategy, the complete opposite of what he did at the beginning of the race, which was going on two-stop strategy. So he stays out. Meanwhile, the other drivers, like William Byron, they pit, while Truex needed to stay out for another 15 to 20 laps in order to make it on that one-stop strategy. And he did that with 76 laps to go. Truex then pits, gives the lead back to Byron. With Hamlin, Harvick, Christopher Bell, and Austin Dillon, and Chris Buescher, the top 6. Truex, he has fresher tires now, I think 13 or so lap fresher tires. He's now back in 7th place. 48 laps to go. That begins for the final round of pit stops for people on the two-stop strategy. And this was an interesting one when Kyle Busch, he got black flagged by NASCAR. But apparently his team added tape to the grill of the car now with the next-gen car in order to have the downforce thing, you know, for that whole thing to work. NASCAR elected to not allow the teams to add tape to the grill of the car. I think that they can allow it to the brake duct part of the car, but not allowed to add tape to the grill of the car. So when the team did that, NASCAR black flagged them. The issue though is that the team said that they did this 200 laps ago, which, number one, if they knew it was against the rules, why would they do it in the first place? Second of all, why did it take NASCAR that long? It took them 200 laps to figure it out. The 18 team has been on pit road numerous times since they put that tape on 200 laps ago. Why didn't they pick it up in the first place? Boggles my mind, but I know there are some people that are a bit pissed off on why that's a rule. Rule's a rule. That rule is pretty cut, clean, and dry. That is a black and white rule. I don't know why the 18 team did that, but they got black flagged. But they were able to rebound it pretty quite nicely at the end of the race. So now back up front. Now, like I said, Truex, he's on 13 lap fresher tires, and so he's closing in on Byron. We're seeing drivers like Harvick, Austin Dillon, Denny Hamlin, you know, Chris Buescher. Those drivers are pitting. Byron's staying out. He's going to try and make it to the end of the race. He's going for that one-stop strategy. So, like I said, Truex on those 13 lap tires, closing in on Byron. He's gaining 2/4 tenths per lap. However, now he's got lap traffic. Lap traffic sort of kind of balanced things out just a tad bit. Not much, but kind of balanced things out just a little bit. So much so that Byron and Truex were now starting to run about the same lap time, or at least about a tenth off. However, those drivers that pitted, especially Denny Hamlin, much later in the race, they now have 30 lap fresher tires than Truex and 40 lap fresher tires than Byron. So now Truex, he's within 6 tenths behind William Byron, but now Denny Hamlin, he's the fastest car on the racetrack. With those much fresher tires than the two drivers up front, he is chasing down the 19 and the 24 car pretty quickly, as well as Kevin Harvick, who's right behind Hamlin. Now Larson, who was in 3rd place at the time, starts to fall back. Hamlin and Harvick continue to move forward. They get by Kyle Larson for 3rd place, and now they're up to 3rd and 4th position. And then they're not able to chase down Martrick Jr. because now Truex, he's starting to fall off as well. Hamlin and Harvick get by the 19 car with ease. And with 5 laps to go, Hamlin is all over the back bumper of Byron, pulls it inside on the back straightaway, enters 3 and 4 side by side, and takes the lead with ease from Byron, the 11 car, now out in front. But again, he's got Harvick all over his back bumper, and they have the same amount of tire or laps on their tires, so they're pretty equal. Harvick and Hamlin, they each have not won a race in quite some time, especially Kevin Harvick, so he is desperate to try and win a race, does his best to try and chase down Denny Hamlin, but lap traffic plays into Hamlin's favor, and he's able to hold off Kevin Harvick to win at Richmond for his 47th career win, his first win in I believe 13 races since Las Vegas in the playoffs, and breaks the streak of drivers under the age of 30 winning in the NASCAR Cup Series. One for the old dogs, or one for the veterans, however you want to call them. But Hamlin comes back to victory lane, scores his 4th win at his hometown track, and this is the first win for Toyota in 2022. So this is something that the Toyota team really needed to jumpstart their 2022 campaign. So here's a look at the unofficial results on your screen. So like I said, Hamlin wins, Harvick in second. Third place, William Byron fourth. Truex and Kyle Larson rounds up the top 5. Christopher Bell in 6th. Ryan Blaney in 7th. Alex Bowman 8th. Kyle Busch, even though he was black flagged very late in the race, was able to rebound for a top 10 finish. Austin Dillon in 10th and Chase Briscoe in 11th. 12th is Tyler Reddick. 13th, Brad Keselowski, Chase Elliott 14th, and Chris Buescher rounds at the top 15. Daniel Suarez, Joe Logano, Harrison Byrne, Ross Chastain, and Austin Cindric round at the top 20. Eric Almirola, Cole Custer, Eric Jones, Ty Dillon, and Todd Gilliland, the top 25. Bubba Wallace, AJ Allmendinger, Ricky Stenhouse, Justin Haley, Michael McDowell, Corey LaJoie, Landon Castle, JJ Yaley, BJ McLeod, Kurt Busch. Now, Kurt Busch, he was having electrical issues on lap 10, had to go behind the wall for numerous laps and would end up finishing, I don't know, 200-something odd laps down in 35th. Cody Ware 36th, and Greg Biffle in dead last. And here's a look at the playoff grid after Richmond. 7 names are colored in green. William Byron now top of the playoff grid, 7 playoff points, and Denny Hamlin becomes the 7th different winner of 2022. 7 races in, 7 different winners. Ryan Blaney plus 83 alongside with Chase Elliott. Martin Truex Jr. plus 64 ahead. Now those 3 drivers, they're able to be in the top 16 for at least 1 race. They're out of the danger zone. But Joey Logano plus 57, Harvick 35, Kyle Busch 33, Eric Almirola 26, Tyler Reddick 25, and Daniel Suarez, I should say, holds the final playoff spot at the moment. 13 points ahead of Austin Dillon, 14 points ahead of Eric Jones, 16 points ahead of Kurt Busch, and 20 points ahead of Chris Buescher. So yeah, overall my thoughts on this race, again, it was a different strategy. It wasn't the type of racing that we have seen so far in 2022. A lot of on-track action, being and banging competition straight up. This race was way more strategic, way more of a mental game, which I thought was a nice change of pace. Now, again, there are there are a lot of issues with Richmond that people have not being as much excitement on the racetrack, which I think is a fair argument. I do think it'd be better if the race was shortened, but again, different story. You could say that about every racetrack. But I liked it. I love the different change in strategy. I love that it was more of a strategic race rather than just straight up, competition of just being and banging of, who has the fastest car. There was a lot of undercutting your other competition. Drivers electing with 2-stop strategy, 1-stop strategy. It was very unique and I enjoyed it a lot. Chad Knaus, he did a phenomenal job. I think this was the perfect race for him to broadcast, and he even said in the commentary numerous times that this was the perfect race for him to cover, because with Chad and how incredible a crew chief he is, this was a crew chief's race. Denny Hamlin may have driven the car to victory lane, but Chris Gabehart won the race. His pit strategy calls throughout the race put Hamlin in position to take the checkered flag. This was a crew chief's race. And Chad Knaus played perfectly into that role for the broadcast. I really enjoyed his insight and his commentary. So again, I was fairly enjoyed by this race. We're not going to talk about Fox in the pre-race because I didn't watch it, and thank God I didn't, because I heard they did some cringy skit with the watermelon seed. God, I can't wait for NBC to take over. But yeah, there is a lot of stuff that we need to talk about with some of the drivers. I mean, Richard Childress, RCR, especially Tyler Reddick. Yes, Austin Dillon finished 10th, but I was surprised how just invisible RCR was. They were nowhere to be found. They weren't competitive at all. Yeah, Dillon finished 10th, but outside of that, you heard nothing from the 3 car or the 8 car. How about, again, one for the old dogs between Harvick and Hamlin? This was a very great day for Toyota. Hamlin winning, Truex in 4th, led a lot of laps. Kyle Busch had a much faster car, I feel like, than 9th place, but even after all that happened, the fact that he still finished in 9th is very impressive. And Christopher Bell in 6th place. He led some laps. All 4 Gibbs cars, even Kyle Busch, were competitive. And they all, even though Hamlin and Truex were the only ones that were race winners, it was nice to see Toyota finally seems like to get their stuff together and have a solid day this year. Because so far, Toyota has just been completely off in 2022. So it was a nice change of pace to see all 4 of the Gibbs cars have a nice run in 2022 at Richmond. But 2311 Racing, on the other hand, yeah, I mean, Bubba 26, there was an issue that his pit crew did on that last pit stop cycle. I forgot what it was, but he had an issue with the pit crew and the wheel and the guns, whatever it was. But the 23 and the 45, they need to get their act together, because at this rate, neither of them are going to make the playoffs. Bubba, he's already out the top 20, and Kurt Busch is 18th in standings. I remember 3-4 races ago, Kurt was like 9th or 10th in standings, and now he's 18th. Not good times for the 23 and 45 camp. Kevin Harvick, I feel like this year, Kevin Harvick has been slowly gaining back his momentum, coming back to form, not to being a race-winning contender week in and week out, but to at least being more competitive. 2020, Harvick had an incredible amount of top 10s, but just he didn't have a race-winning car at all last year. This time around, I feel like he may be in contention for some race wins this year. Had a very quiet day at Richmond today, but he had speed. Was in the top 5, top 10 all race long. Was competitive. Nice change of pace for that Ford team. And again with Hamlin, this was his first top 10 this season, and it's a win. And I think he's now 22nd or so in the point standings. So, yeah, it was a good day for the veterans of NASCAR with, Truex running strong, Hamlin running strong, and Kevin Harvick running strong as well. And it was also a nice day for RFK Racing. Keselowski 13th and Buescher 15th. I say that, you probably think that doesn't sound like a nice day at all, but considering the year that those two drivers have had, outside of their dual wins, RFK Racing has been basically nowhere near the front. And Keselowski and Buescher, both of them, especially Keselowski, they actually showed some speed. Keselowski was in the top 10. He was in the top 10 in both of the stages, so he showed some speed, and hopefully this can be maybe a sign of things to come, of better things to come for the 6th car and the 17th car as they try and make their way into the playoffs, especially Keselowski. He has a very steep hill to climb if he wants to make it into the top 16. But if I were to give a rating for this race, I really enjoy this. I would give this a 7 out of 10. In terms of strategy, I loved it. But in terms of on-track competition, there wasn't much really. It wasn't until the last half of the stage of the race was when really things got excited from an on-track perspective. Stage 1, Stage 2, they were really it was kind of like of a build-up to Stage 3. They were just filler. Stage 3, especially the second half, was when really things got going. So I'll give it a 7.5. I'll give it up a little bit for that second half of that stage, because that was really fun to watch, to see how Byron, Truex, Hamlin, and Harvick were managing their tires and who would really come out on top, because at first you thought Truex was going to easily pass him, and then it looked like Byron may be able to hold him off. And then Hamlin comes in, and you're thinking, oh, maybe Hamlin could steal the show. But then maybe Harvick could also then take over. So, again, it was really fun, that last half of that stage. So, yeah, overall, I was entertained. I know some fans may not find it entertaining, which is understandable. Because I know there's some fans that are more of on-track action and don't really care for the mental aspect or the strategic aspect of racing, but I, for one, enjoy that race. It was a nice change of pace from what we've seen so far in 2022, but that is going to conclude this episode of MDK Racing Victory Stop. I've been talking for 23 minutes. I didn't expect to talk this long for Richmond, but yeah, I enjoyed it. A lot of stuff to talk about. Very excited for next weekend, Saturday night racing at Martinsville. Then we got Bristol Dirt. And then we got Talladega in 3 weeks. We got a lot of exciting racetracks coming up in the Cup Series schedule. I'm excited for it. And yeah, thank y'all so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content. Tell me your thoughts on this race in the comment section down below. But until next time, my name is Jett from MDK. Thank y'all so much for watching. Congratulations to Denny Hamlin, your winner at Richmond.